coach on Team Villain. I've been coaching for probably 7 years on and off. Most of my coaching is independent based, so my first time actually affiliating with a team, never really did in the past. As far as my training experience, I've been lifting for probably about 12 years now, and with strength specific sports in mind for about 10. So I have been around for a long time. I guess we'll just get right into it. We're going to be talking about the Sumo DeadLift. I'm going to start with the very fundamental basics of how I like to approach teaching someone who's fairly new, whether it's new to lifting in general or new to like the strength sport aspect of like powerlifting specifically. For me personally, first thing I start with in the Sumo DeadLift is picking foot stance, and I start very, I guess you could say, standardized. I don't know what's the word here. Help me out. Throw me a word like a very.
That sounds right.
Like
generic.
Generic. That was the word. Start with a very generic stance. So pretty much what I try to teach most people when we start out is picking a stance where you can reach the bar and your knees are relatively in line with your ankles. So from here, right, I probably took a little bit inside of that. So from here, I've got pretty much a 90-degree angle on my ankles. I've got my knees stacked over my shins, over the bottom of my heel of my foot. And for the most part, I try to teach people to be further back on their weight. So I'll keep a relatively vertical shin. Keep in mind a lot of things that I'll talk about today is not a one size fits all, but everything comes with a little grain of salt, and there are lifters from all walks of life that have successfully completed the greatest lifts of all time with very different stances, grip widths, etc. This is just kind of how you can start off. So I can reach the bar from here, and I have 90-degree angles. I've got my knee stacked over my shin, stacked over my heel. From here, what I'm thinking about is keeping my shins relatively vertical and being close to the bar, so that the bar is almost scraping against my shin, maybe a little bit in front of it, if anything. Next thing you want to think about when you're setting up for your Sumo DeadLift is where you're grabbing the bar. We've got our feet in place, in the right place. Place in the right place. They're placed correctly. And the next thing you're gonna think about is how you grab the bar. Obviously, for the most part, people who Sumo deadlift over conventional deadlift is mostly based on a range of motion thing. Obviously, we'll talk more about mechanics later on. But for the all intensive purposes of just generically starting out, we're thinking about reducing range of motion so we can reduce the work done so we can move more weight. So for your hand positioning, you want your arms to be as long as you can make them. That means your elbows being locked and being straight out from your shoulder socket. So if you were to draw a line from my shoulder to my wrist, it would be straight. I have my feet already placed, hands straight out from my shoulder, and now I'm gonna grab the bar. Now, if everything is done correctly, you'll probably land onto knurling. Of course, this varies depending on lifter size. The only time I would say to sacrifice your arm length when you're starting out is if you can't grab the bar on the knurling. So for people that are more narrow set, maybe narrow on the shoulders or maybe just smaller in general, if you went shoulder width, you'd be all on smooth. And obviously it's very difficult to lift a bar with no knurling. That's why bars have knurling. So if you're smaller, then you probably want to go outside of your shoulders a tiny bit just so you can get your fingers on. My rule of thumb is to never go more than one finger onto smooth. So if you're one finger on smooth when you're starting out, that's okay. If you're starting to get to your second finger, like your middle finger being onto the smooth, I would probably adjust and go outward a little bit, even if it means making your range of motion longer by pulling your arms out. Because if you can't hold the bar, you won't get the lift anyways. So from there, what I'm gonna do is, once I've established my hands and my feet placement on where I'm gonna grab the bar, where I'm gonna set my feet, I will then decide what I wanna do in my pre-lift ritual. For me, what I like to do is approach the Sumo DeadLift top down, and rather than bottom up. And I think a lot of that is the same for conventional as well. I don't see any reason for anyone to ever start from the bottom and go up. So what I mean by that is, feet are placed, we know where we're putting our hands, but we don't want to be squatted all the way down at the bar for a really long time trying to figure out how to set something up. So you want to get a ritual that works well for you so that you can establish a consistent routine every time you approach your deadlift. What I mean by that, and I guess I'll talk about what it looks like for me, is I'll get into my stance, my arms are long from where they would be placed onto the bar. What I'll do is I'll retract my scaps, I'll pull down and back so that my lats are packed and my back is engaged, ready to go. From here, I'm gonna brace and set my midsection. So I'll breathe, brace my midsection. Top, my back is already rigid because I've already cued my lats. This is rigid. And now from here, I'll squat down to the bar and hinge at the same time, and then I'll start my lift. If you do all that correctly, with your back engaged, your core stable and tight, realistically, if the weight's light enough, it'll come off the floor on its own. That's just from you engaging your muscles and producing more force than there is weight on the bar. So for, I guess, just as an example, right, this is my stance. Lats, brace. I don't even really do anything. I just kind of tighten up, lean back, grab the bar, and it just comes off by itself. And it kind of does that all the way up to probably like 315 for me. Obviously it varies depending on how strong you are, how much you weigh, how far back you leverage yourself. But in general, the best form of practice would be to start with a lightweight, like something super easy, 85, 90 pounds. Something light enough that almost anybody could probably lean back against it and it would probably leverage. It's kind of like a swing, so that you can learn how to leverage yourself back against the weight while engaging all those muscles that we talked about in our ritual setup. Do your ritual setup, lever yourself back against the weight, and now ideally, if there's 85 pounds here, and you say you weigh 150, you leveraging back will move the swing this way. That's the bar coming off the floor and swinging up, without really doing any work or applying any extra force.